Welcome to today's Congressional Candidate Conversation, brought to you by Power the Future. Power the Future is a national nonprofit focused on being the voice of and the champions for energy workers across America. We appreciate the candidates taking time to talk energy, resource development, and jobs with us, as they are going to be more and more important here in the great land in the last frontier. These candidates want to be your representative and earn your vote on November 8th. So let's get to the conversation, shall we? As we discuss jobs, Alaska's bright energy future, and more, as we start the conversation here, brought to you by Power the Future. Welcome back to Congressional Conversations. This conversation is going to be with former Governor Sarah Palin. Governor, welcome, and thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We've talked about a number of things that we're going to talk about today. The first is energy solutions for today and the future. Mm-hmm. What should the U.S.'s goal be with regard to a mix between renewables and traditional fuels, energy sources, and how does Alaska play a role in leading the nation for that?
Well, Alaska does play the leading role. We are the head, not the tail, when it comes to securing and allowing prosperity in our nation via our natural resources and the way that we do it right. What the U.S. needs to do, though, in looking long-term down the road, one, like, our politicians need to be honest. And
Sure.
when our politicians, especially on the left, start talking about their alternative sources of energy that they believe are so realistic, and hopefully we'll talk about how unrealistic their ideas are, but their whole green new energy, that whole deal, it's so far-fetched that we're wasting a lot of time arguing about it, throwing resources at it, when we could be putting even more research into conventional sources of energy, how to do that even better, the developments,
Sure.
even more ethically and economically and efficiently. There are so many things that we could be doing that are realistic, and I want to deal in reality. The politics that come into play when it comes to energy, especially alternative energy, it's such a waste of time and resources, because so many of these alternative energy projects, it's just crony capitalism. It's the Solyndras of the world, and there's a grab bag of government goodies handed out with big pots of money under the guise of finding alternative sources.
You know, that's a perfect segue to the question I was going to ask next, and you touched on it. The Inflation Reduction Act had tons and tons, $500 or $400 billion to establish green energy projects in the country. Now, how would you work in Congress to make sure that those don't turn into Solyndra version 2.0 on a much, much bigger scale?
So I know it's called an Inflation Reduction Act, right? You know, you should call it the Infrastructure Reduction Act.
I should.
You know why? Because ultimately it will lead to less infrastructure being able to be maintained, constructed in our country, in our state, because our nation's already this close to being bankrupt. You know, well, in a lot of terms we are, $33 trillion in debt. People don't even know what the actual amount is, because it's so many zeros. But no, this Inflation Reduction Act, it's not going to do anything to actually reduce inflation. Government isn't in the business of that, but government's in the business of screwing things up when it comes to the economy, because the cause of this inflation, this government overspending, government creating dollars out of thin air through their quantitative easing, then they raise the debt ceiling, and it's not really even a ceiling, and they spend. Too many dollars chasing too few goods and services, that creates inflation. So it's government's fault. So I don't look to government for solving the problem. And this Inflation Reduction Act, the good example that you're giving is what's earmarked for alternative sources of energy, when there's zero accountability in where these dollars go. Perfect example, as you just mentioned, is Solyndra. And we see that there's no accountability, not just that act, not just those dollars, but everywhere that government spends.
Yeah, certainly. It's something that I hope that Congress really does a good job of watchdogging. Mm-hmm. I know that's something that you've talked about throughout the campaign. Is that what part of watchdogging is going to be your role in Congress?
I hope that I'm known as a watchdog there because I'm so cognizant of how hard it is for people, families today to make their money, to make that income and to fuel up their tank and to put food on the table. The resources that a family has, it's sparse nowadays and it's very valuable. I don't like those dollars going to government and then it being wasted. So gosh, kind of as a mama grizzly, I'll take that on too, is making sure government's not wasting our hard-earned money. We know how to spend it better than they do.
Certainly, and again, I think that in advocating for all of Alaska, we need to be cognizant of the fact that traditional energy is the cornerstone industry for our state.
That's a given. So those who don't believe in science and geography and geology and biology and don't understand what conventional sources of energy are, what they do for a state, for a country, and instead have this pie in the sky idea that we don't actually need conventional sources of energy. It's some utopian, weird idea of theirs, and if they would just deal in facts and, like I say, believe the science involved in what those resources are, where they come from, how we can develop them, exploit them responsibly, if they would.
Back here on The Conversation with former Governor Sarah Palin, former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, as we look ahead to roads and railroads to resources. Something Alaska certainly needs if we're going to access the opportunities we have here in the state. Governor, how do you work to make sure that the ENGOs that hate that idea don't get any further into the congressional discussion?
Well, a lot of those leaders of the obstructionist groups and party, they need to come on up here and see what Alaska is all about. See how we do conduct our business. And we care more about the environment and the land and the waterways than anybody from outside, because we want in perpetuity others to enjoy what we have grown up enjoying here. So we do it right. So they need to come up here and see. They also need to see the vastness of Alaska. They need to keep some things in perspective. For instance, ANWR. We've heard the analogies, right? That the little sliver of land that we need to explore there, that the Biden administration, they shut everything down. They don't want even exploration there. Is if you picture a football field and then you put a welcome mat in the middle of the football field, that's the scale of what's needed in ANWR. So if they would keep some things in perspective, but really if they could see how clean and green we do our there's not a drop of oil in Cook Inlet, and here Biden shut down, Cook Inlet even drilling. It's just so unrealistic what it is that they're doing. So on a personal level, the leaders, the obstructionists who have so much influence over their followers,
right,
if they could start understanding, and that's not unrealistic, that they could open their minds to what it's really all about and how important Alaska is, because we're the Fort Knox of America. We're buying metals from China when we have them here. We'll be beholden to China if we keep this up. So getting a lot of people to come on up here, see how it's done, and allow a mindset to be a healthier mindset to understand what we have.
So what are some of the projects that you specifically could work on as a member of Congress to drive that resource opportunity?
We need roads east and west,
sure,
in Alaska.
And north and south.
And north and south. When I was governor, it just would become so political. Sure. And to me, I was kind of impatient with it because I was like, you know what? If we need a road to get to those resources that will rev up the economy of the state and help the rest of the union, let's build the road. It was
sure,
as simple as that. Well, no. I mean, then it would be one thing after another from the obstructionists throwing out a lot of false information to get people all stirred up and opposed to a road that is needed. Just the basics here in Alaska, there's still a lot of things that we're lacking. And roads, very, very little acreage is even owned in the private sector in Alaska, right?
Less than 10%.
Yeah, it's government and it's native corporations. it's so if there's a realization out there that ultimately a road, say to a mine, so that we can access the resources, it helps the public. We're on their land. We're developing through their land. If people could understand what it is that will be provided them.
We're going to talk more about this as we continue on the conversation, because I think that roads and rail to resources really is something that is tangible.
It is, and I'm glad we're going to talk about it more, because it's a matter of priorities too. Absolutely. Alaska cannot ask for money from the federal government to do projects that don't make sense to anybody down in the States, or we're not going to get that money. Right. But if we're shown as reasonable and smart about our requests, then we'll be better off.
Yeah, certainly in the last 30 seconds, I want to play word association. Alaska LNG.
Futuristic.
Ambler Road.
Needed.
West Susitna Access.
Needed. No brainer.
Perfect. Those are great answers. When we come back, we're going to have more conversation with former Governor Sarah Palin as we continue on talking about energy, jobs, natural resource development, and more, brought to you by Power the Future. Continuing on our conversation with former Governor Sarah Palin, as we talk oil and gas. Oil and gas is a big thing to the state of Alaska, and across the world right now, we're facing oil and gas shortages. We're facing LNG shortages. So let's talk a little bit about Alaska's opportunity, Alaska's place in the overall global and U.S. and get to the background. What's your stance on continued development of oil and gas, whether it's the North Slope, Cook Inlet, throughout?
More and more people across the U.S. are recognizing the whole drill baby drill thing, what it means, what it does for them.
Sure.
Because, you know, it can't just be about Alaska. We need their support. We need their representatives and their senators to not block our projects that are needed, because they're, you know, they could be very controlling. So we need the public, the electorate, to be really educated, and then the politicians representing them need to be educated, because we do need their votes. And yes, the whole drill baby drill thing, Alaska is known for resources more and more. I like to, when I go around the country, and as such a proponent of Alaska's interests,
sure,
I'll be doing a speech about something, well, not relevant to oil and gas, and somehow the chant will start, the drill baby drill thing, right? Because that's, I'm glad to be an ambassador for that, to let people know how important it is. Okay, it's Alaska's lifeline, and that's why I talk about oil and gas all the time. I talk about our minerals. I talk about our God-given natural resources all the time. It's my baby. It's my favorite thing to talk about, because of the importance. It does. I mean, don't let me, but I could go on and on about it, because it is our lifeline. And I want people to understand that there's an inherent link between energy and security, and energy and prosperity.
Sure.
Energy is foundational. If we rely on other countries to do it for us, to develop the resources when we have them right here, and it's just a matter of allowance and having some primacy, letting us make decisions on how to develop them, we will no longer be America as we know it. And right now, I mean, there is no alternative. So it's now or never that we start making better decisions, because America, no alternative to what it is that America is all about. We are that shining city on a hill. Other nations look to America and wish to emulate the things that we do right. So we have to keep doing things right, but we have to, in the weak areas in America, we need to make better decisions there. A weak area in America is too many people buying into this Green New Deal thing that's unrealistic. It's expensive. It's not sustainable. We need to do better in that area.
We see a worldwide shortage of LNG. We see it, whether it's New England talking about rolling brownouts this winter, and gas prices that are 6 times higher than they were 2 years ago, whether it's Germany because of Nord Stream 1 going off line for days, weeks, months at a time.
Yeah.
LNG is becoming kind of a geopolitical currency, much more so than it was a couple of years ago.
Right, right.
Alaska has 240 trillion cubic feet of stranded natural gas. We re-inject it, to be environmentally safe, by the way.
Yeah.
But we also have 243 trillion cubic feet. How do we get that off and into the market?
Okay, so we have that going, and of course we have, which hopefully everybody already knows, the barrels of oil that are waiting for us. You know, we used to flow 2 million barrels a day down our pipeline. Now we're less than 400,000 barrels a day, and it's all because we're not allowed to explore and to drill more. But when it comes to LNG also, I'm proud of Alaska. It seems like we're on the forefront, right,
Sure.
in educating others and recognizing what LNG can do for a worldwide market. And yeah, I know that there's a shortage, especially in LNG, because of a lack of development in that area. But other areas that people want to ascribe to this energy crisis, it's fake, because Biden is causing an energy crisis.
Sure.
He is. We don't have a shortage of, say, oil and gas. I mean, because it's there. We can exploit it responsibly, and we can start using it.
It can't be developed because of environmental oversight
Right,
and environmental
the regulations,
Right.
and it's the bureaucrats. It's not even so much the head shed, the top people, right? It's those bureaucrats who are the spokes in the wheel that can just jam everything up. So we need to make sure that we have good public employees, good public servants, understanding that no, you can't be so out of control and overreaching.
Certainly, as we continue on with this conversation, we're going to talk about mining in the next segment. Anything else that you want to add? You have about 30 seconds to the people who are going to be voting for somebody on November 8th.
Well, I recognize where America is geopolitically on the globe. We have got to be the leaders when it comes to energy. We do it cleaner, we do it safer than any other country. They can look to us to see how to responsibly exploit God-given resources. We need to keep doing things right, but we need to be more aggressive with the whole agenda and not just kind of sit back and wait for others, especially in DC, to make decisions for us.
Governor Palin, appreciate that. When we come back, we're going to talk about minerals, critical, strategic, and others when we come back to our conversation with former Governor Sarah Palin. Back here for one last segment in our conversation about energy, jobs, resource development, and more with former Governor Sarah Palin. Governor, we're going to talk minerals, mineral opportunity. What should Alaska's position be in leading the world and helping secure domestic supply chains for those strategic and critical minerals that are going to be more and more necessary as we go on with the future?
They sure are going to be more and more necessary. So Alaska's role needs to be, we are the leaders, right? Because we can do it right. And we have this abundance of the minerals, of the metals that are just sitting there waiting for that safe development. It comes back to, you know, that bigger picture. If we are to rely on foreign countries, there are enemies, they can weaponize resources like minerals and withhold them or do whatever they want to do as a weapon against us. We're unserious and we're not smart when we do anything in Alaska to hamper the exploration, the scientific studies, anything that we can do to make sure that our development projects coming up are going to be done right. We can't be short-sighted. Here's the thing. China thinks long term, right? Their Belt and Road project that, they've been touting that. I mean, they're looking 100 years down the road.
Sure.
They're storing in their reserves the metals, the minerals that, well, the rest of us are going to need also. And we're looking to them to develop and we're looking to buy from them. Again, instead of us just doing it ourselves. So we need to start looking like they do, long term, futuristic. And that, for instance, is that word association with LNG, futuristic. We can't just think, oh, here's an example, okay, not to get off that particular example, but 10 years ago, I did an interview and I was just like so pro ANWR and I was debating somebody and they made the point, they said, oh gosh, even if we started drilling today in ANWR, it'd be 10 years before you saw the benefits. And I'm like, you know what? It's 2022. And I said that back in 2012. Right. Just think if we would have responsibly started more exploration and then eventually development, how much better our state and our country how much safer, how much more secure we all would be.
You and I have talked on the Power of the Future Energy Hour in the past about, communist China and the warlords in the Congo and the Taliban having control over critical and strategic minerals. So Alaska has this vast opportunity, whether it's Ambler, whether it's Palmer, whether it's Bocan Mountain down on Prince of Wales Island, whether it's Pebble, whether it's any of these, Donlin, you name it, there's massive amounts of opportunity in the state. Mm-hmm. What are a couple projects that you wholeheartedly, enthusiastically support, and why? And are there any projects that you just say, I don't see that happening at this time?
As you go down that list, man, I could throw a dart at that list and I could hit any of them and say, that's a good one, that's a good one, that's a good one, because there's so much potential in all of them. We got the Willow Project, and I'm thinking about all the
Sure.
Jobs that can be created there. I'm looking at I want more and more research done to prove a responsible way of developing Pebble. And I know it's politically incorrect nowadays to even mention Pebble, but doggone it, as long as we can do it right, and if one resource isn't sacrificed for another.
Sure.
I commercial fished in Bristol Bay for a couple decades too. I don't want the world's richest salmon spawning grounds to be harmed whatsoever. But if we can show, if the mining industry can show that Pebble could come online and not adversely impact those salmon spawning grounds, then let's keep looking at that. So, oh my gosh, just every one that you listed, my head starts spinning.
Ambler is the other one that I guess I would kind of want to talk about, right?
Good.
Because Ambler has multiple strategic critical minerals
Right.
for technology, things that we are almost 100%
Batteries.
reliant on China for.
Yes, yeah.
In Congress, you're going to have an opportunity to advocate for that, be a voice for that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell your colleagues on the left that are like, oh, under no circumstances should we ever do a road to resources?
Maybe they don't understand what China has over us. You know, China owns the ingredients for pharmaceuticals
Right.
that America buys.
We saw it during COVID.
Yes,
PPE,
exactly.
respirators.
So, you know, they need to be more aware. Their constituents need to put more pressure on them to get all knowed up about what's going on. And big picture, America needs to be respected again in this world. We need to be kind of feared instead of us kowtowing to foreign enemies, even asking them to rev up our economy and to make us safe. It's a very dangerous place that America is getting to if we're continuing to be disrespected and dismissed. We got to get back to being the leaders.
Governor Palin, I appreciate your time. Let our watchers and listeners know how to get a hold of your campaign.
Yes. Okay. Sarah for Alaska, nothing capitalized. SarahForAlaska.com. And gosh, we would love anybody's help. Our campaign, as usual, I've been involved in Alaskan politics for 30 years now. It's always grassroots. We're always outspent 10 to 1 or whatever it is, and I don't worry about that. That's for the campaign managers to worry about. But it's we would love people to help out by volunteering, just talking to neighbors, putting up signs, and it's the old Alaskan way of campaigning.
Thanks to Governor Sarah Palin for coming on the conversation today. We'll have another one for you here shortly. Thanks again for tuning in.